Kings aren't born in castles, they're born in chaos, where clarity is rare and thinking sharp is survival. Chosen ones, you don't just have wisdom, you carry king-level intelligence. You move through life with the mind of a ruler, quiet, precise, always 10 steps ahead. And make no mistake, the world senses it. The moment you walk in, they can feel the weight of your thoughts. Your silence speaks with the pressure of command. Your choices ripple like war strategies. They fear that, they hate that, because you don't react, you calculate, you don't follow, you observe, and then outthink. That's why they try to twist your power into a problem. But let's get one thing straight. You were never too smart or too much. You were just surrounded by people who couldn't match a king's thinking. And to your enemies, let this burn. You weren't outsmarted by luck. You were outmaneuvered by someone chosen by the universe itself to see through lies, fake loyalty, and small minds. Now to you, the one watching this, who's doubted their light, who's kept quiet to make others comfortable, stop. That silence, that shrinking, that second-guessing, it insults the wisdom you carry. You weren't chosen to blend in. You were chosen to lead with invisible crowns, the kind made of strategy, insight and vision that scares anyone who runs on ego. So listen, chosen one, like this message, and subscribe if you have not already. This isn't for clout. It's to make sure this truth reaches every other chosen one feeling isolated in a room full of noise. When you engage, it signals YouTube that this isn't just another video. It's a coded message for minds built like yours. And we need to find each other. You see, Solomon's wisdom wasn't loud, it wasn't emotional, it was silent power. It was a chessboard inside the mind. And that's what you carry. People stare at you like you're hiding something, and you are. You're hiding centuries of insight, decisions calculated to the millimeter, an internal compass that doesn't need advice to stay aligned. That's not just intelligence, that's inheritance. That's what being chosen really means. It means people won't understand you, but they'll copy you. They won't support you, but they'll study you. They'll doubt you, but somehow still fear your next move. You are not lucky. You're not weird. You are not too deep. You are royalty in disguise, operating in a world that mistakes volume for power. So stop apologizing for seeing too much. Stop softening your mind to protect their egos. The universe didn't choose you to be liked. It chose you to be legendary. And the ones who tried to bring you down, they weren't just fighting you, they were trying to outsmart the very force that built your mind. That's not a battle they ever had a chance of winning. And you were never just thinking ahead. You were building empires in silence. So here's your moment of truth. If you really carry the mind of a king, if the wisdom within you has ever made people stare, whisper, or walk away, you'll feel it now. That pull, that pressure in your chest. It's not random, it's your confirmation. Drop the number 77 in the comments if your intelligence has ever made you the outsider, because that's exactly who this is for. Stay locked in. Every second from here forward peels back another layer of your power. Let's get into it, step by step. This is where kings sharpen their minds. Number 1. They tried to outplay the mastermind, not knowing you built the board. They didn't lose to you, they lost to the mind the universe personally sharpened. And now, every time they see you, they remember their defeat. They thought you were just lucky, just observant, just quick with words. No, they had it all wrong. You weren't moving fast, they were moving blind. You weren't guessing right, you were remembering what was already wired into you. While they were fumbling with opinions, you were accessing precision. And now they're angry because the one thing they can't manipulate is a mind like yours. They don't hate you because you're wrong. They hate you because you see through what they can't even explain, because you move like someone with a blueprint while they're stuck reacting to the chaos they created. You're not just intelligent, you're engineered. Your thoughts don't wander, they hunt. And every time they tried to set you up, you were already 5 moves past the trap. That's what wisdom looks like when the universe puts its fingerprint on someone. That's what chosen really means. Your intelligence isn't something you developed in school or picked up through books. It's remembrance. You don't just learn, you unlock. That insight you feel in your bones, that inner voice that's always right, that sense of, I already knew. It's not coincidence, it's legacy. The same way Solomon didn't earn wisdom through trial and error, he inherited it. You too carry a wisdom that existed before explanation, and they couldn't stand it. They mistook your calm for weakness, your silence for emptiness. But inside, you were operating like a king in war mode, watching, calculating, letting their own foolishness expose them. They couldn't beat you, so they blamed you. They couldn't trick you, so they labeled you. Too intense, too smart, too much. That's what they call people they can't control. But let's address you, chosen one. You who doubted yourself because they didn't understand. You who tried to hide how deeply you see, how far you think, because you didn't want to make people uncomfortable. Stop that. Stop shrinking the universe's brilliance to fit into tiny minds. Stop questioning the light that burns through illusions. Your intelligence was never supposed to make people feel safe. It was meant to make them wake up. And when they chose to sleep instead, that wasn't your failure. That was their choice. You don't just think, you reveal. And people hate mirrors they didn't ask to look into. Now here's what they don't tell you about being chosen. When the universe picks you, it fights for you. Not with noise, not with drama, but with timing, with protection, with elevation. That's why they couldn't touch you. Because they weren't going against just a person, they were going against a force. They were clashing with alignment, trying to override what had already been written into your path. And that always backfires, because when people play games with the system snaps back. And you were the snap. Your mind is not common. Your perspective is not casual. You feel like an outsider because your intelligence doesn't run on approval. It runs on truth. That's why they tried to discredit you, not because you were wrong, but because you were always right too soon. And to the enemies watching, let this settle deep. You didn't fail to fool the chosen one because they were lucky. You failed because they were built to decode people like you. Now, chosen ones, take this in. The next time you feel like you have to explain your intelligence, your vision, your clarity, don't. Stop giving explanations to people who can't even keep up with your questions. Stop making comfort your goal. You were chosen to disrupt, to shift, to move things that have been stuck in darkness for too long. Your presence is not a coincidence. It's a calculated strike of intelligence at the heart of everything false. So let them hate, let them misunderstand, let them gossip. Because at the end of the day, they're not even playing the same game. And you're not just playing it, you built the damn board. Number 2, they set traps in a maze you designed. They didn't lose because you were lucky. They lost because they walked into a war where you already owned the terrain, the sky, and the silence between their steps. They thought they had you cornered, that they could provoke you, bait you, manipulate you, that you'd respond emotionally, impulsively, stupidly, that they could play you like a pawn while whispering strategy like generals. But here's the truth. They can't stomach. They were never in control, not even for a second. What they didn't realize was that while they were busy plotting their little games, you were standing still, letting the entire board rearrange itself in your favor. They mistook your stillness for vulnerability. They didn't know you were watching, waiting, recording, not reacting. While they ran their mouths, you ran calculations. While they were scrambling to win battles, you were already writing the final outcome. See, they weren't playing against a person. They were trying to outwit a mind that's been aligned with the universe itself. That's the part they couldn't understand. You don't chase, you attract. You don't panic, you pause. And that pause? That silence they thought meant confusion. That was strategy breathing. They thought they had you figured out because they judged you using their own shallow metrics. Who talks the loudest? Who moves the fastest? Who swings first? But your power doesn't scream. It whispers. It lets them build the illusion of control just long enough for the collapse to hurt more. You're not just wise, you're wired. Downloaded with insight they couldn't buy, steal, or imitate. Every word you speak carries weight they can't measure. Every choice you make shifts outcomes they can't trace. And it's driving them insane, because they keep trying to play games with someone who already knows how the story ends. They've watched you take losses and assumed they won. Watched people walk away from you and thought they had damaged your worth. Watched you fall silent and believed they had silenced you. But your silence? That was just the sound of the universe loading your next move. Every betrayal was a redirection. Every setback was a disguised alignment. Every enemy, a walking lesson and a ticking bomb built by their own ego. Let's talk about those enemies for a second. The ones who smiled in your face while secretly trying to study your weaknesses. The ones who praised you in public and plotted in private. They didn't just fail to destroy you, they exposed themselves. Because to outsmart you, they would have needed to understand you, and you are not understandable to those who lack depth. You don't live in the shallow end of thought. You don't operate in predictability. You are chaos in disguise, wisdom wrapped in skin. You are Solomon's insight coded for the now. What they call unreadable is just a level of intelligence they can't penetrate. And let's be honest, you let them think they had a chance. That's the part that stings them the most. You handed them rope and they tied their own noose. You gave them space and they thought it was permission. But you weren't stepping back. You were rising, quietly, unshakably, unbothered. Because when you are chosen, when the universe itself backs your movements, even your silence speaks louder than their noise. Chosen ones, stop doubting that knowing in your gut. That moment you feel someone's energy shift. That instinct that tells you a setup is coming, even when there's no evidence yet. You are not paranoid. You are tuned in. Stop second-guessing the code written into your bones. They couldn't outsmart you because you don't rely on logic alone. You operate in alignment. You see through masks because the universe designed you to read what isn't spoken, to feel what's buried. That's why you scare people who live by manipulation. They can't lie effectively in front of someone who hears everything between the lines. And now, look at them, scrambling, confused, bitter, watching the very person they tried to sabotage rise quietly through the storm they started. That's what happens when people try to tamper with the path of the chosen. They weren't just challenging you, they were poking at a system that doesn't play fair, a system that doesn't miss. Let them keep guessing. Let them keep reaching. They thought you were vulnerable because you didn't clap back, but you don't waste moves on noise. Kings don't play tag with court jesters, and wisdom doesn't perform for an audience that won't understand the play. Here's what they never expected: that you'd come out of the fire smarter, that you'd come out of the betrayal stronger, that you'd walk away not broken, but reborn. Because when you're chosen, pain isn't just pain, it's programming. Let's pause and speak to the doubters, the chosen ones who've been made to feel crazy for seeing too much, too fast. Listen carefully. You're not crazy. You're clear. You're not broken. You're built different. And they know it. That's why they try so hard to contain you, to label you, to keep you doubting. Because the moment you step fully into your intelligence, into that cold, clean knowing that doesn't need validation, the game ends, and their power dies with it. So don't apologize for what you know. Don't explain the insight. Don't water down the gift. You are not meant to be understandable. You are meant to be unshakable. And when people try to test that, let them. Give them silence. Give them space to collapse under the weight of their own tricks, because you weren't meant to play the game. You were meant to outlive it. And to every fool who tried to play you, they weren't just gambling with your patience. They were betting against the universe. And the house always wins. Number 3, you read the code while they trip over the pattern. They mocked your clarity until reality lined up exactly how you said it would. Now they call it coincidence, but you know better. It was never luck. It was always pattern, and you were always 3 moves ahead. They stumble through life thinking things just happen. They trust randomness because it's easier than facing the truth that some people are wired to see beneath it all, and that person is you. You don't walk around hoping things work out. You read the structure behind the chaos. You feel patterns in conversations. You decode motives from a glance. What they call a coincidence is just a missed signal they were never sharp enough to recognize. They live in fog. You live in foresight. They think you're lucky because your warnings keep coming true. But luck has nothing to do with it. You aren't reacting. You aren't guessing. You're reading the code in real time. You sense the shift in a person's tone before betrayal happens. You feel the energy drop before the setup. And when you speak on it, they laugh. They roll their eyes until everything crashes exactly how you said it would. That's what makes them uncomfortable. You don't just observe, you foresee. You don't assume, you recognize. You don't overthink, you oversee. You're not paranoid, you're precise. Your awareness doesn't come from fear. It comes from tuning into something they don't even realize exists. You catch what they miss over and over. And instead of being humbled by your accuracy, they mock it. Why? Because deep down, they know you're reading something they'll never understand. Let's talk about that for a second. The way they try to make you doubt yourself. They say you're imagining it, being negative, reading too much into things, and sometimes you've even believed them. You second-guessed what you knew. You tried to rationalize what your gut already confirmed. You let the noise of the world drown out the code your mind was decoding line by line. Stop doing that. You're not imagining anything. You're not unstable. You're not too sensitive. You are aligned. And when the universe tunes someone's frequency to truth, it's not going to make sense to those still stuck in distortion. They walk into traps you avoided months ago. They get blindsided by people you stopped trusting long ago. And when they come crawling back, looking for answers, they'll act like they always believed in your clarity. But you'll know the truth. You always do. You see, people don't fear your eyes, they fear your mind. Because your intelligence isn't built on facts they can memorize. It's built on perception they can't access. You don't just listen to what's said, you track what's unsaid. You don't follow trends, you predict outcomes. And because they can't do it, they try to shame you into silence. But the most dangerous people in the room are never the loudest. They're the ones reading the whole system, while everyone else chases the obvious. That's why they can't win. That's why they can't lie effectively around you. Because while they're playing the surface game, you're watching the code unfold underneath. And it terrifies them. Let them call you crazy. Let them call it coincidence. Let them label what they can't comprehend. But don't you ever stop trusting that deep, clear knowing that flashes through you like lightning. That's the real wisdom you carry. And the longer you doubt it to fit in with people who miss the obvious, the more you're betraying your own gift. This is what it means to carry intelligence on another level. You feel what others only realize after the damage is done. You move like it was scripted because for you it is. And while they run from the truth, you walk through it like it's your natural environment. Remember this, they aren't afraid of what you've said so far. They're afraid of what you're holding back. They're afraid that if you saw this much already, what else do you already know about them? And you don't need to say a word, because chosen ones don't prove they're right. They just wait for the world to catch up while moving on to the next code. Number 4, they thought you were quiet, not knowing you were loading. They raised their voice to prove a point. You raised your silence and erased theirs. Your silence isn't weakness, it's not hesitation, it's the chamber before the strike, the coil before the snap, while they ran their mouths trying to impress, trying to manipulate, trying to control the room. You were watching, memorizing patterns, tracking inconsistencies, listening to the lies stack on top of each other until they couldn't hold their own weight. They didn't know they were performing for someone who already saw how the story ends. Your silence isn't passive, it's a pressure cooker. And when you finally speak, it doesn't just hit, it ends conversations, ends illusions, ends false power structures built by cowards pretending to be kings. You don't argue, you unravel. And that's what terrifies them. They underestimated you because you weren't loud, because you didn't need attention, because you didn't need to flex your intelligence to prove anything. But that's what makes you dangerous. The most powerful people don't announce what they're going to do. They observe, they wait, they let others build a stage and then burn it down with one sentence. You've always known more than you've said. You've always caught more than you've confronted. And that's your edge. Because while they overexpose themselves, you keep everything tucked behind unreadable eyes and calm silence. You're a vault, and people hate what they can't access. That's why you're either admired or feared. There is no middle ground with you. People either respect the way you hold your power, or they're shaken by the fact that they can't find your weak spot, that they can't figure out how much you know. And worse, they don't know if you've already used it against them. Your silence doesn't make people comfortable, it makes them paranoid. And here's the truth. You were never the loudest in the room because you didn't need to be. You're not performing, you're processing. You don't rush to speak because words are weapons, and you aim before you fire. That's what makes you precise, deadly, unreadable. They thought they had the upper hand because you didn't react. They thought your calm was consent. But what they failed to realize was that your silence was strategy. While they exposed their intentions, you were analyzing, mapping their weaknesses, documenting every misstep. And by the time they realized you weren't fooled, it was already too late. You don't need to clap back. You let consequences do the talking. That's how chosen ones move. You're not in the business of noise, you're in the business of truth. And truth doesn't need to yell. It just stands still while everything false collapses around it. Understand this, your silence is not a flaw to fix. It's a force, a weapon designed to protect the wisdom you carry. The world is loud because it's scared, but the chosen stay still because they know. So stop letting them guilt you for being quiet, for thinking before you speak, for choosing to watch rather than react. They fear that silence because it reflects their own emptiness. Your calm reminds them of their chaos. Your stillness forces them to confront what they're trying to avoid, and they hate you for it. But that's the price of being unreadable, of carrying a level of intelligence they can't decode. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to defend your silence. You've already won by not letting them access what they were dying to manipulate. And don't think they don't know it. They feel it every time you walk in a room and say nothing, yet dominate the energy. Every time they try to provoke you and you blink like they're beneath your attention. Every time your silence says more than their loudest lie. You were never just being quiet. You were letting them dig their own grave. And when you speak, it's not to argue. It's to bury what's already dead. Let the loud ones perform. Let them spin narratives. Let them shout. You keep sharpening your silence, because the ones who listen the longest always strike the hardest. Number 5, they were playing the game. You were redesigning the board. They followed instructions. You rewrote the language. They were memorizing the rules while you were busy bending reality. They thought you were just another player in the system, another piece on the board, another name in the crowd. But what they didn't realize is that the rules they were clinging to, you never agreed to them. You never accepted their limits. You don't play by the structure they forgot. You reshape it. That's why they can't understand how you win without following their steps, why you succeed without using their scripts, why you see openings in places they swear are closed. It confuses them. It threatens them, because they were trained to believe there was only one way, and then you showed up and walked right through the wall they called impossible. They hate you for it, not because you cheat, but because you create, because you don't ask for permission, because you make space where there was none, and because every time they say you can't, you make it look easy, clean, and inevitable. They think you're arrogant, but the truth is, you're just unshakably aligned. You don't need credentials when you carry clarity. You don't need their approval when you're operating from something far deeper than validation. Your wisdom isn't second-hand. It's built-in, preloaded. The universe placed something inside you that lets you see beyond the edges while they're still trapped in the frame. While they memorize systems, you design your own. While they chase titles, you chase impact. While they color inside the lines, you question why the lines were drawn in the first place. And that right there, that's what shakes them. They need rules to feel safe. You break them to set yourself free. And nothing is more terrifying to a follower than someone who moves like they don't need a map. Let's be clear, your power doesn't come from defiance. It comes from understanding the game so deeply that you no longer need to play it. You've outgrown the programming. You've outseen the illusions. And now you operate above the rules that were made to contain smaller minds. That's why you've never fit in. Why jobs felt suffocating. Why small talk made you restless. Why their limitations never made sense. You weren't made to follow. You were made to reconstruct the entire thing. People get mad when you move outside their framework, because if you succeed without playing their game, it exposes the truth they fear the most, that the game was never real to begin with, that it was just a cage dressed as a system, and that someone like you can walk through it untouched. And let's not pretend it's always been easy. You've questioned yourself. You've doubted your way. You've wondered if maybe you should just follow the path they all agreed on. But the truth always came back louder. You were never built to follow. You were built to lead by redesigning the very ground you walk on. And those who try to challenge you, who try to limit you with their small logic and tired rules, they end up confused, frustrated, watching you succeed in ways that make no sense to them. That's because they never understood this one truth. You're not bound by the rules. You are the anomaly they can't calculate. They've always tried to box you in, tried to tell you this is the way it's done, but you never asked for directions. You didn't climb the ladder, they watched you build your own and climb it sideways. And now they want to know how you did it. They want to know what you're hiding. But you're not hiding anything, you're just thinking differently, and that is your threat. So don't shrink, don't explain, don't apologize. Your mind was made to open locked systems and bend invisible barriers. You are not rebellious. You are original. You're not here to obey systems. You're here to evolve them. You're not here to blend in. You're here to redesign reality in a way only a chosen mind can. They followed the rulebook. You rewrote the future, and that's what makes you dangerous. Number 6. You don't walk into a room, you rewrite its frequency. Your silence isn't quiet, it's command. You don't take space, you shift gravity. They'll pretend not to notice, pretend you're just another body walking through the door. But the moment you enter, everything tilts. The air feels heavier, conversations slow. People fidget with their tone, their words, their posture. Why? Because your presence doesn't ask for attention, it demands alignment. You don't have to say a word, you are the message. Some people light up a room, you reprogram it. It's not because you're loud, it's not because you try, it's because your energy doesn't exist on their frequency. You're tuned to something sharper, deeper, higher, and the moment your presence hits the space, everyone in it has to adjust. Some lean in, some pull back, but no one stays the same. They feel it in their chest before they recognize it in their mind, that unspoken authority, that unplaceable pressure. You're not carrying arrogance, you're carrying awareness, and that awareness creates discomfort in the unaligned, because your very being is a mirror, and most people don't want to see themselves clearly. They don't know how to respond to someone who sees straight through performance, who picks up the shift in energy before a word is even spoken. They're used to fake power, the kind that talks loud, plays dominant, performs for attention. You don't do any of that, because your power doesn't beg to be seen, it's already felt. That's the weight of being chosen. You walk into rooms and unintentionally make people question themselves, their intentions, their image, their mask. They don't know why they feel exposed. They just know that around you, pretending gets harder. You walk in and people remember their lies, their manipulations, their unfinished business, and they either shrink under the pressure or rise into honesty. That's your effect, not because you're trying to control them, but because your presence shifts people back into truth or drives them deeper into fear. And here's what they'll never admit. The ones who try hardest to ignore you feel you the most. The ones who pretend you're not that deep are the ones who sense how deep you really are, because you don't move like them. You don't need the room. The room adjusts to you. You're not just seen, you're registered, like thunder in the distance before a storm, like a coded signal that only certain minds can process. And whether they love it or hate it, once they've felt your energy, nothing is ever neutral again. That's why people act different around you, why some start speaking carefully, why others get defensive for no reason. They think it's something you did, but it's really who you are. You don't just shift the room, you reveal it. And yet, somehow, you've doubted this. You've questioned why people pull away, why friends fall off, why crowds get awkward. Let me be direct. They couldn't handle the pressure of your presence. You didn't push them away. They got burned, trying to stand next to something real while still living fake. You were never too much. They were too exposed. Your energy speaks before you do. It tells the truth without apology. It carries a clarity that can't be faked, bought, or rehearsed. And people who've built their lives on illusion feel it like a spotlight. But don't tone it down. Don't shrink. Don't soften your stride just to make the insecure feel comfortable. You weren't given this presence to be subtle. You were given it to shift everything around you. Remember this: crowds follow noise. Leaders respond to presence. And only the real ones can stand beside power that doesn't speak, but still commands the entire space. You didn't come here to fit into rooms. You came here to change the temperature of them. Number 7, they wore a mask. You saw the blueprint beneath it. A liar fears exposure, but what they fear even more is the one who doesn't need proof, just presence to see right through them. They came dressed in charm, wrapped in fake kindness, speaking rehearsed words dipped in sugar. They thought the disguise would work. They thought, like everyone else, you'd fall for the mask. But they forgot one thing. You don't see the face. They forgot you read the frequency. They built a character. You read the script behind it. You don't need them to mess up to catch them. You don't wait for the lie to slip. You feel the gap before they even speak. That subtle hesitation, that forced laugh. That moment, their energy and words split into 2 separate stories. Everyone else gets caught in their image. You go straight to their intention. It's not a talent, it's wiring. You were built to read underneath, to detect the fake in the friendly, to decode the message behind the smile. And that's what terrifies them. They can trick most people, but not you. You don't just hear what's being said, you hear the tone behind the sentence, the silence after the praise, the tension under the compliment. They think they're hiding, but you're already 5 layers deep into who they really are. And it drives them crazy. Because when someone wears a mask, their power only works if people believe it's real. But when you're around, their tricks fall apart. The power they hold over others slips through their fingers, and they know it. That's why they either keep their distance or try to discredit you. Because if they can't fool you, they'll try to label you. Too intense, too suspicious, too much. But let's call it what it really is: too aware. You didn't accuse them, you didn't expose them publicly, but they felt your knowing. And that alone was enough to shake them. The way you looked at them too long, the way you didn't laugh at the joke that everyone else did, the way you didn't fall for the charm. That's all it takes to unnerve someone who thrives in shadows. You didn't even confront them, but they felt seen. And that, for people like that, is a threat. Let's go deeper. They didn't just fear you seeing the lie. They feared you seeing them, not the version they show the world, but the parts they hide from everyone, including themselves. You weren't distracted by the presentation. You locked onto the contradiction. And manipulators can't function around contradiction. They rely on smooth surfaces. You break that surface without saying a word. It's not about being suspicious. It's about being chosen. The universe gave you clarity most people can't handle. While others need evidence, you just need the room. While they study body language, you already feel the betrayal in the air. And yes, sometimes even you questioned it. You felt something was off, but they were so convincing, so calculated. And when you brought it up, they flipped it, tried to make you question your sanity, accused you of paranoia. And for a moment, you almost believed them. But deep down, you never forgot the truth. You don't imagine things. You intercept energy. You don't guess. You process faster. You don't need proof to know what's already vibrating in your bones. That's why they fear you. Not because you're loud. Not because you expose them with drama. But because your quiet stare feels like X-ray vision. Because around you, they know the performance won't survive. You aren't here to play detective. You're here to live in truth. And when you're chosen, you don't chase proof. You embody awareness. That's what makes you powerful. So stop questioning your knowing. Stop asking if you're too suspicious. Stop holding back your instincts to protect people who never had pure intentions to begin with. You were built to feel what others are trained to ignore. And that gift, it's not weakness. It's your strongest weapon. They wore a mask. You saw the fracture. They told a story. You read the tension. They tried to gaslight you. You let them dig their own hole. Because at the end of the day, you don't need evidence. You are the evidence. And for people hiding behind lies, that's the scariest thing in the room. Number 8. They scrambled for the throne, not realizing you are the bloodline. They ran after crowns. You never chased anything because you were born carrying the gravity they're still trying to imitate. They fight, scheme, and sell pieces of themselves for power, for position, for influence. But you walk into rooms and everything shifts, not because you force it, but because your presence already holds authority. While they scream to be heard, you whisper and the room tilts. While they perform leadership, you embody it. They mistake fear for influence, but fear isn't power. Fear collapses the moment it's challenged. You don't intimidate people, you unsettle them, because your energy isn't built on fear, it's built on certainty. That stillness in your bones, that calm way you carry yourself, that's what makes people fall silent mid-sentence when you enter. It's not magic, it's memory. Something in them remembers what true power feels like. And that's why they hate you for it. You don't climb ladders, you don't beg for seats at tables, you don't politic your way into favor, you don't chase clout, you don't market yourself like a product, because you never had to. The power others are spending their entire lives chasing is what you radiate effortlessly. And that is devastating to those who have built their identity around struggle and status. They assume you're playing the same game, that you're maneuvering, competing, calculating, but they don't realize you're not in the game. You're the force that rewrites the scoreboard without ever touching a piece. You don't need the spotlight because you already own the light they're trying to steal. That's why they try to discredit you, why they call you arrogant when you're silent, why they try to undermine what they can't understand, because deep down they know you don't need what they're chasing, and that kills them. Here's the secret. True power isn't loud. It doesn't brag. It doesn't stomp its feet and demand to be acknowledged. It just is. And when you carry that kind of power, the natural kind, the unteachable kind, it disrupts everything around you. People either lean in or pull away. There's no neutral reaction to your presence. Some want to follow you because they feel safe in your clarity. Others want to challenge you just to see if they can shake you. But no one ever forgets you. Because you don't leave impressions. You leave impact. You didn't study leadership. You embody alignment. You didn't take a course in strategy. You were born with internal maps no one else can read. And while they fumble for titles, ranks, or validation, you operate from something ancient, something that doesn't require approval, something that makes people question themselves the moment they stand next to you. You've probably been confused by it too. You wondered why people get competitive with you when you never signed up to compete. Why they act defensive around you when you're just being still. Why they try to one-up you when you weren't even speaking. It's because your existence alone feels like a challenge to those who built their identity on trying too hard. And when someone has spent their whole life clawing for scraps of influence, being in the presence of someone who naturally exudes command is unbearable. But hear this clearly, chosen one, that power you carry, it was never meant to be earned. It was coded into you from the start, not because you're better, but because you were meant to lead from another frequency. You don't rule people. You remind them what real power feels like. Not control, not domination, stability, precision, truth. You don't control people's actions, you influence their awareness, and that's the kind of power that can't be taken, only recognized. So stop apologizing for how people react to your stillness. Stop downplaying your influence just because others haven't found theirs. You don't owe anyone smallness. You weren't made to chase power. You were made to reveal what false power can't survive next to. They chase power because they think it will make them whole. You already are, and no title, no platform, no applause can upgrade what's already complete. You didn't inherit power. You are the source they keep trying to imitate. Number 9. They study for answers. You are the answer. They chase knowledge like it's hidden in books. You carry it like it's carved in your bones. They spend years memorizing theories, quoting thinkers, studying charts, repeating what someone else told them was true, and still, somehow, they move like they're unsure, still disconnected, still lost in noise. Then you walk in, and without trying, you say one thing that makes the whole room stop. One sentence, one insight, and suddenly everything they studied gets reframed in an instant. That's what happens when wisdom doesn't come from effort. It comes from alignment. You don't repeat, you reveal. You don't memorize, you embody. You don't sound wise, you are wisdom. That's what shakes them, because they thought wisdom was earned by hours and certificates. They thought intelligence came through status and systems, but you carry truth like it's part of your DNA. You breathe clarity. You absorb truth not by effort, but because your very being is tuned to it. They've tried to match it, tried to copy your depth, but what they can't recreate is the root of it, because it's not something you learned, it's something you remembered, something that's always been inside you. You don't speak to sound smart, you speak when it matters, and when you do, people listen differently, not because your voice is loud, but because your words feel true, because there's no ego behind them, just clarity, just certainty, just knowing. And that unnerves them, because when someone like you walks into a space, everything false starts shaking. You don't need to correct people, you don't need to argue, just your presence reminds people how far they've drifted from truth. They don't come to you for information. They come to you when the noise gets too loud and they need direction. You're not a resource, you're a reference point. They don't always tell you, but they watch you. They repeat your words when you're not around, because something in what you said just feels different, not rehearsed, not second-hand, just right. And still, there were times you questioned it, times you felt out of place, times you held back your insight because others looked at you like you were too deep or too much. But you were never too much. You were just in rooms that settled for too little. Don't doubt the way your mind works. Don't shrink the depth of your knowing to fit inside shallow conversations. You were chosen not to echo noise, but to cut through it. You're not here to impress. You're here to awaken, and they know it. That's why some admire you and some avoid you, because wisdom doesn't just teach, it convicts, it stirs, it exposes. You are not smart. That word is too small. You are coded for truth. You are rooted in perception. You are wired with insight that isn't taught, but remembered. They look for experts, but what they need is someone like you, someone who doesn't need a stage to speak truth, someone who doesn't need applause to feel whole, someone who simply knows. That's why people test you, challenge you, try to make you prove yourself, because deep down they already know you're right, and they want to shake that knowing. But wisdom doesn't flinch. It doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't need to be validated. And that's you. So own it. Own the silence you carry between thoughts. Own the way you connect things without trying. Own the fact that people look to you not for facts, but for direction. You don't just carry wisdom, you are the frequency of it. Not everyone will understand, not everyone is ready, but those who are, they will feel it before you even speak. And that's the mark of the chosen. Now that you've seen the truth in every word, let it settle. You weren't just called, you were constructed for this. Every part of you was built with intention, precision, and wisdom the world can't replicate. And now it's time to walk fully in that knowing. If this message struck something deep inside you, like the video, subscribe to stay tapped in, and drop the number 77 in the comments to confirm you're walking in chosen alignment. Share this with someone else who's felt misunderstood, because they might just be one of us, still waiting to wake up to their power.